Thank you so much for having me, and we appreciate being able to address people of like minds as Pacific Justice Institute. As Linda pointed out, we're a nonprofit law firm, and I know nonprofit and law firm typically don't go together, but it's true. We are a nonprofit law firm, and we're blessed to be able to provide people with lawyers without saying, okay, you got to do a retainer and things of that nature. And that's really important, because in the areas that we specialize in, religious liberty, parental rights, and pro-life causes, there's not a lot of money at the end of the road. It's a matter of we litigate against government entities, and typically for taking away freedoms. As many of you probably know, the First Amendment and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, does not apply to private parties. It applies to government entities. Its job is to keep the government out of our lives, if you will, as much as possible. In California, that's a real challenge, isn't it? But hopefully, we're gonna make some difference here. I regret greatly all the things that are happening in LA County with the fires and such, and some really terrible results. But I'm hoping, I'm holding out hope that perhaps people will see how there's no leadership really from the Democrats, and in particular the leftist aspects of LA and such. And I think that was made crystal clear, and there's a lot of talk about it. But anyway, so we, Pacific Justice Institute, I think we have 33 offices throughout the United States. For many years, when I first started working there, it was a California concern, hence the Pacific Justice Institute. Then we went to Oregon, Washington, and then during 2020, when we had all these cases that came to us because people were being fired because they said to their employer, listen, I have a sincerely held religious belief against the vaccine, mostly because it was produced or manufactured using fetal cell tissue, and therefore they have a moral obligation not to take it. And many employers, their response was, fine, our accommodation for your religious belief is you're fired. And so we took hundreds of these cases in at a time when nobody was really doing that. In fact, other religious liberty organizations came to PGI and said, we're just going to refer them to you guys, which, look, that worked. And in the process, we opened up offices all over the country, and thankfully we're able to get people representation. As most of you know, losing a job is a horrendous thing to happen to you. Losing a job because they want to make fun of your religious beliefs instead of accommodating is horrendous, and it shouldn't happen in this country. We all know now that it wasn't necessary for it to happen in this country because of the way the vaccine turned out. But nonetheless, our position was, if you want to take it, take it. If not, don't take it. We should not be compelled to do that. So we literally hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits filed, and we were able to, in some instances, get people their jobs back. In most instances, we did settlement of cases, and then people could go back and, to their lives and get another job. And we did have a rather odd but wonderful event in San Francisco the end of last year. And they're probably one of the most liberal jurisdictions in the state, and maybe their country. We got a jury verdict of just under $8 million for 6 plaintiffs, and so it's something that's we were able to help those people out, and that helps us also to survive more longer and such. But those are the kinds of cases that we get involved with also with religious liberty cases, people preaching on the street corner and they're arrested or pushed out. We represent people in that situation. We have a lot of cases involving kids that want to speak up in schools and they want to have a Christian club. And oddly enough, even though the law staunchly provides for their ability to do that, many schools say, no, you're not going to be able to do that. And so we step in. And generally, once we send them a letter, once we send them a letter, they send it to their attorneys, and their attorneys say, they're right, you have to let them have this group. But nonetheless, there's a lot of controversy going on in schools right now. And I think a lot of what I wanted to talk about today is that the situation where California has had, ever since the introduction of the so-called Healthy Youth Act, which is anything but healthy for youth. But the schools have had an unofficial policy that when a child announces gender issues, and people do suffer from gender dysphoria. It's a genuine mental issue that needs to be treated. No question about that. But what is happening is that the schools have said, no, we don't want to tell the parents when the children are telling us about this problem. We'll just go ahead and get them medicated in some instances and go through what is a horrendous process to minors. And so a few school districts around the country, I know of at least 3 in Southern California, they decided we're going to make an opposite law. We're going to say you must tell the parents when you have such a problem, because after all, who better to deal with these issues but mom and dad who love them and want what's best for them. So in response to that, in response to these rogue districts who actually want parental involvement, do you remember a time when the schools were crying about parental involvement? We want parents in here, but we have to do this all ourselves. Isn't this horrible? Yeah, but you're pushing parents out now. And you're saying, leave it to us. We'll go ahead and handle this for you. And something involving what would be an insane situation where, let's say, the school has facilitated some kind of medical treatment or therapy that's facilitating so-called gender change, which never happens. I hope we can all agree that nobody's gender ever gets changed. It's XY or XX, that's it. It's forever. Every chromosome in the body. So the parents are in a position where they watch what's happening to their child and they haven't even been told what was happening and why this is going on. To me, that is a horrendous state of affairs. Well, in response to these rogue districts, the California legislature, in their infinite wisdom, along with our governor, Mr. Newsom, brought in a law that was effective in January 1st of this year, saying that the schools can't adopt policies that allow for parental notification. Oh my God. So here we are. I thought, I was always of the, in political science and such, I was always of the understanding that education is local. So you could invoke people on the school board who have similar philosophical and political understandings, and therefore change the makeup of your school board. In fact, we've been trying to facilitate, Pacific Justice Institute has tried to facilitate more people to run for school board, because there's a heck of a lot of power there that these folks have over children, the most vulnerable in our society. So at any rate, now we have these rules and this new law, and so interesting take here. I want to read to you. This is somebody was during the political season last time was saying, you know, that it's wrong what they're saying about this bill that I just told you about. And here's how the person criticizes the people that are anti this law. The California Senate passed Assembly Bill 1955, which blocks school districts from enacting policies that require staff to notify parents about students' sexual orientation or gender identity. To become law, the bill would have to pass the state's assembly, which happened, and be signed by Governor Newsom, which also happened. The bill says schools should be supportive and affirming of students. It doesn't require school staff to encourage or assist in a child's gender transition, legal experts said. Well, that bill doesn't. But the entire machinery of the California Healthy Youth Act, which is firmly entrenched in schools right now, is designed to do that. So this is, again, another misleading thing. Oh, all we're saying is we need to support and affirm. No, that's not what you're saying. You're saying that school districts who disagree with the state's line don't get to be heard. Those school boards can't enact rules and regulations that have to do with this reporting. So obviously we are in a place now where this is going to, we're going to, and I say this figuratively, we're going to have to go to war with this law and say, no, we're going to sue them. We're looking for plaintiffs. We always are looking for people who are willing to do this. Unfortunately, this is a tough thing to be involved in, and most parents are like, "Oh man, I can't subject my child to this," and we understand that. But where there are people that are willing to take that stand, and maybe they have a relationship with their child that they can allow for that, where we get plaintiffs, we're going to sue in this regard, because I think it's an unconstitutional law. I think that the ability of school districts, school boards, to enact such regulations should be protected. They sure do a lot of things that I don't agree with at the school board level, and nobody has to, step in and rescue me from them. But nonetheless, this is baked in here in California, and obviously, without being redundant, this is a horrendous thing for children, what's happening right now. And those of you with children and grandchildren, it's horrendous what is happening in our state and many other states too. California is not alone in this regard. And we are now in a place where we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to file lawsuits to protect these school districts that are brave enough to stand up, and that perhaps you or I have voted for for that very reason, because of their position they take on this issue. And I don't think at this point there's a lot more important than what's happening here in this regard. This so-called treatment is disastrous. It hurts. It doesn't help. This byline that, okay, we can prevent suicide. No, this does not prevent suicide. The statistics have borne that out. And most Western states, most Western countries have outlawed this treatment. England has, all the Scandinavian countries that were leading in this fight of treating children with this hormones and hormone blockers, etc., and sometimes even surgery. They've given up because they realize this is heinous in my opinion, and many medical opinions. It's a horrible thing to do to a child. Now, if somebody's an adult and they want to make this case, right? If they want to make that decision and say, this is something I want to do to my body, hey, do what you have to do. You're an adult. You get to do that. But to irreparably change a student for something that will go away on its own most of the time. Most of the time, by the time these students reach 18 years old, they decide, okay, well, I don't really feel this way, and I'm not going to go down that road of sex change, so-called sex change. Interesting, one of the things that we also do, PGI, is sometimes if you have a Christian family and their child announces that they heard something at school and they want to change their gender, and the parents say, no, we're not going to do that. We'll get you the counseling that you need, like is what used to happen with gender dysphoria. We'll get you the counseling you need. We'll stand behind you. We love you. The county will step in and take the children. So some years ago, I was handling a case in Sacramento where that's just what happened, is that the mom, a single mother, was trying to deal with her 16-year-old daughter, and she had claimed that she felt like she was a boy instead of a girl. And so they took her away and put her in these halfway houses, or whatever they call them. But it was horrible for her. It was very hard for the child. So we went to court, and many times the best we can do is delay the process, because the state social services is in lockstep with this LGBTQ agenda. And so we litigated this, and it lasted for the better part of a year and a half. And by this time, the child is 17 years, just turning 17 years old. And one day she announced to the court, I don't feel this way anymore. I don't feel transgender anymore. Maybe I'm fluid, I don't really know, but I want to go back home to my mom. My mom loves me, and I know that. And there's one of the most heavy things to be involved with, to watch that with all the nonsense around this young girl, with everything that's happening to a person at 16 years old and 17 years old, with all the nonsense that they were perpetrating against her, that is giving her these meds and putting her in homes with other people that have the same kind of problems, she figured it out on her own. And the statistics bear that out, that if they just wait till they're 18 years old, wait till they have the ability to not be, as Rush Limbaugh used to call it, young skulls full of mush, wait till they get things squared away. And we know that happens, right? We know that happens. As they get older, they tend to get smarter and wiser and make better decisions, typically. But so this is something that is happening, and I kind of ask, with the state stepping in like this and taking away your vote, the vote you made for school board members, what could go wrong, right? I mean, we have a state that's virtually collapsing under its mismanagement, and there is a direct result. This is the one time, this is really one of the few states, maybe New York has this too, this benefit, that you could say everything politically that happens in this state is run by the Democrats. And when there's a problem, you can't blame Republicans, because typically they're not voted into office. We want to change that, right? I mean, we want to change that. You guys are working towards changing that, and we obviously support that wholeheartedly, because there needs to be changes here, and there needs to be big change, right? So these are the kinds of things that we're working on. We're definitely going to have to go full bore on this issue of this law that the governor signed and that went into effect. There is at least one case right now that's in the courts with Chino Valley Unified School District, because they had enacted a law, Chino Hills, I apologize, not Chino Valley. They had enacted a law that mandated parental notification, and they've been sued by the governor and our Attorney General Bonta. And so this is something that is going to make its way through the court, and we've got to stand in the gap. We have to stand up. We have to say no to these folks wherever we can. This is dastardly, and I just hope that we can continue this fight, and we do plan on continuing the fight. I have time for questions.
Yes, let's take 4 questions for starters and see how long this takes. Okay, so Gail.
Where do we sign up? I mean, you're not going to leave this without our signatures. I mean,
Well, I'm going to give you a website.
Oh, we got to do that.
Where do we sign up? Question is
Yeah.
on the website.
Yeah, it's on pji.org. I apologize. I had sign-up sheets to bring with me, but this morning when I left, I didn't grab them. So
Don't tell grab them.
Oh, yeah, Brad will find out, unfortunately.
Okay, anybody else?
What do you, how, in your opinion, how did this all get started? In other words, what happened? Do you want to ask it?
No, you go. I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. What happened? What happened here, and how did this all go awry, so to speak?
Listen, without disparaging anyone, it happened, it was twofold. One, I think people fell asleep and didn't pay attention to what was happening in schools, and the school board did whatever they wanted. And the school boards are beholden to unions, labor unions, who are very powerful and who buy into the leftist ideal almost in totality, maybe even in totality. So that was the first thing, is that you have the people who were asleep at the switch, and then meanwhile you had, parents that were asleep at the switch. And then at the same time, when the California Healthy Youth Act was passed, which was all about this radical sexual education to kids. We're not talking about a high school, birds and the bees, whatever you call it, education. We're talking radical sexualization of children. And that's where this came from. And out of that, once they got the as you will, the camel under the tent, that was it. And so now the state is running gangbusters in the direction of this radical sexual education of children. And this issue that we're talking about today fits the radical sexual education. So that's how this got legs, if you will. And
Christy Lozano just walked in, excuse me, and she's everything education and an activist, and the list is a long one.
I think
so,
we've spoken.
Mike, you're talking to somebody that's right there with you.
I think we've actually spoken.
We have.
That's right.
So there was an article this week about our DA sympathizing with LGBTQ and going to the podium in court sympathizing with them, which, he said they need a safe space, which every kid needs a safe space, not just LGBTQ.
Right. Yeah.
So we're at a level where our DA is pushing this in Santa Barbara.
That's right.
And I do believe that we have to come at it with things that have teeth, not standing at a podium speaking to a school board or complaining or whatever.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice? I mean, obviously we need attorneys that support this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But to make a case against, one of the biggest elected local officials in Santa Barbara, the DA, who is also supported by the superintendent of schools.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that the elected sheriff, I haven't heard him doing a bunch to push back on this.
Yes.
If we have those three sort of either complicit or working with, what do we do?
Well, and then this gentleman asked, well, how did we get here? It's because of this. One of the reasons is this election of wholesale leftist leaders in our communities. And we see LA, thank God, LA just got rid of their DA. And the guy that took over is way better than the guy that was in there. But you know, even he is somewhat radical. I think the thing that first of all, the thing that has to happen is that, and I know this might seem trite to some, but you know, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear them and I will answer their prayers. So first of all, we got to start praying for this state. We thankfully have someone coming into the White House who hears our concerns and walks with us on this, but we need to do something here in California that's election-minded. But we need to be involved actively. I want this to be everything and being at the school board meetings, holding them to account. I do believe that even though that one of the problems with the school boards is that the unions support these people, and so it's hard to run against them. They have a lot more money, but that needs to happen. We need to get people in there, and that means people need to be willing to stand for the truth. And in the electorate process, we need to file lawsuits. Parents need to step up for this. Again, we understand it's hard. It's hard to be a plaintiff in a case like this because your whole life is sort of dissected. I mean, it's not fun. And whenever someone comes to me and they say they want to file a lawsuit, I just tell them, are you ready for this? Because it's not easy. But people have to stand up. We have to bring these suits for the damage that is done to these kids. And the fact is, there is a constitutional right for parents to raise their children. And that's something that has to be litigated and changed. Right now, the Ninth Circuit has a case out there that basically says that if once you deliver your children to the school, then it's the school's responsibility and the parents don't get to be involved in curriculum. That's knowing what the children are doing, looking at their books. You know, again, all this is time consuming, but it's the children. They're being changed in horrible ways. So that's another area. We have to bring these lawsuits. We have to find parents willing to say, no, the school district is wrong. I have the constitutional right to raise my children in the way I see fit, against my morals and my values, and that has to be supported.
So if we don't have parents that do that, or we don't have people that are responsive to the call, how do we educate them to get them there? Because that's what we have a lack of.
Yeah, and I think the education is an important thing. I think that's why we like to speak at forums like this, and we think that it's something that's very important. We've got to make changes, and the changes tend to happen, unfortunately, way slower than we want, but they do happen when people become aware. And we need to hold forums. This is probably a great organization or club that could hold forums like this, a public forum that gives the ideas on the other side. Because right now, the ideas on the side that we oppose is way louder, way more organized, way more funded than the side that we do. And we speak to churches and such. Churches need to be involved in this a great deal. And that's something that, for those of you who are church people, need to start rallying up the troops, because you can find people that believe in the cause.
Yeah, and getting the churches involved. It's not a political thing.
Right.
This is a moral thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly great point, and that's the way it has to be presented too. We're not talking about who do you vote for when we're addressing the church. We're talking about the moral issues of our time, one of the most drastic issues of our time, and frankly, maybe of any time because of where the children are learning this from very young ages. We're talking, I've heard it in kindergarten, I've heard of other first graders where they're being presented with this. Another thing that can be done on this is grandparents and parents. We have opt-out forms that are available, free download from pji.org. That's pji.org. Those are those are available that you can deliver to your school, and they should be delivered every single semester at the beginning of each semester to opt out the children from some aspects of the sexual education. You're not going to be able to save them from all, but you can save them from some of the instruction that's sex education based.
Biker, you want to wrap it up now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm ready, but I appreciate
You
y'all.
want to take one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Stephanie?
I'm happy to. Yeah, it was enacted as of January 1st, 2016. So it was in 2015 where the bill was being. We opposed it. We tried to go against it. Unfortunately, it passed. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here.